All right, everyone. So I want to give you guys my take on the Kyle Rittenhouse story because the jury has begun deliberations and we are going to be getting a verdict very soon. So I believe that Rittenhouse has a solid case for self-defense. I think he has a strong argument for self-defense. I do not believe that Rittenhouse is what certain people portray him as, that he was some sort of a maniacal right-winger, or as some people on the internet call him, a white supremacist who just went to Kenosha to murder innocent liberal protesters who were just there to protest and call for the justice for Jacob Blake, because Jacob Blake was this innocent black man murdered by a white police officer, which is just a BS narrative. The fact is that Jacob Blake was a violent, malicious monster who had an outstanding warrant out for his arrest, and the cops came because his fiance or girlfriend called 911 and said that Blake had sexually assaulted her. So the cops came, and Blake tried to, well, for one thing, Blake took his baby's mama's kids, put him in a van, and then he had a knife in the vehicle, and he was trying to reach for that weapon, and the cops, or the police officer, shot Jacob Blake. And the misinformation surrounding Jacob Blake, the misinformation that was being disseminated throughout the internet regarding the Jacob Blake story, is what caused the riots, is what provoked the riots in Kenosha. And these left-wing maniacs were destroying property. They were lighting cars on fire. And they had set on fire cars on a sales lot. And the owner of that sales lot has two other properties in Kenosha, two other sales lots in Kenosha. And he wanted those properties to be protected. Understandably so. I mean, if you own a business, do you want some left-wing freaks attacking your business? Do you want anyone attacking your business? It's quite obvious. So, Rittenhouse volunteered to defend these properties, or to defend one of these properties. And he shot 3 people, killed 2 of them. And of course, they'll sit there and say, oh my God, this guy, he was a terrorist. He murdered these protesters, blah, blah, blah. Well, the fact is that Joseph Rosenbaum said, I'm going to kill you guys. Because Rittenhouse was with another volunteer who was there to protect property. His name is Ryan Balch. And Rosenbaum told Balch, if I ever see you guys alone, I'm going to kill you. He made a death threat to these guys. So Rosenbaum then chases after Rittenhouse, and Rittenhouse said, friendly, 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 showing that he was not there to be a threat. Now, Rittenhouse was armed with a weapon. Rittenhouse had a gun on him. If someone is chasing after you, and you have made it very obvious that you are not there to be a threat, and you are making it very obvious that you are armed, and someone is still chasing after you, and they are an utter maniac like Rosenbaum, it's quite obvious that this person is a threat to you. It's quite obvious that this person is dangerous, because he is crazy enough to chase after someone who is obviously armed. You don't know what that person is going to do to you. You don't know what that person has planned for you. He could have a knife. He could have a gun. And it is a fact that Rosenbaum tried to take Rittenhouse's weapon. He lunged at Rittenhouse in the attempt at taking Rittenhouse's rifle. So Rittenhouse defended himself and shot and killed Rosenbaum. And you have people, oh, Rosenbaum, he's this innocent victim. He's a hero for the justice of Jacob Blake. And every time I hear the name Jacob Blake, I can't help but think of that scene from Mr. Deeds where Al Sharpton is like, for goodness sake, let's eat some cake. Anyway, comedy aside. Rosenbaum was no hero. Rosenbaum was no hero. Rosenbaum was a child molester. He was a left-wing fanatic and a child molester who in the early 2000s raped young boys. You can look into this. I'm not making this up. He raped young boys as young as 9 years old. This guy was a monster. I do not feel sorry for him. He was no hero. In other words, we didn't lose anything with the death of Rosenbaum. And then you have the other guy, Anthony Huber, who tried to attack Rittenhouse with a skateboard after Rittenhouse had shot and killed Rosenbaum. You just saw somebody shoot and kill somebody in self-defense, and now you're going to attack them. That person has every right to believe that you are also a major threat to his life, because obviously you are crazy enough to attack him. For all he knows, you could have a knife, you could have a gun, you could also be trying to take his weapon. So again, in that situation, Rittenhouse was in the right. And then you have the story of Gaige Grosskreutz. Now, this guy was shot by Rittenhouse, but he wasn't killed. And Grosskreutz was armed with a pistol. And if you look at the footage, you will notice that Rittenhouse has his weapon lowered when Grosskreutz is right in front of him, showing that Rittenhouse did not want to kill Grosskreutz. He only wanted to defend himself. And Rittenhouse only shoots Grosskreutz after Grosskreutz makes it very obvious that he wants to shoot Rittenhouse with his pistol, because Grosskreutz was armed with a pistol. And in that incident, in that moment, you have a 100% solid case for self-defense for Rittenhouse. And also, there was a detective who was present in this altercation, and the detective stated that there was another guy who was one of these left-wing maniacs. His name was Joshua Ziminski. He fired a weapon in the air. And seconds after Ziminski fired in the air, Rittenhouse shot and killed Rosenbaum. So there was all sorts of chaos happening already. I mean, that's quite obvious. They were destroying property, all of these things. It was a very destructive and chaotic situation. And when you have that sort of thing taking place, do not be surprised if people get shot and killed. Because you have these lunatics like Rosenbaum destroying property, lighting cars on fire, threatening people, which is what Rosenbaum did. I mean, this guy was a psychopath. I think he said something like, "I want to rip your hearts out," or something like that. He was threatening Rittenhouse and his friend, saying that, "I'm going to kill you. If I ever see you guys alone, I'm going to kill you guys." All of these things. And I think that Rittenhouse is innocent. I do not believe that he is what certain people in the media have portrayed him as. I don't believe that he is what a lot of the left-wing, all of the left-wing lunatics online have portrayed him as, saying that he is a white supremacist or something like that. I think there's just no evidence at all. And they've already pointed out that there's some sort of footage in which Rittenhouse is watching people looting properties, destroying properties, and Rittenhouse is heard saying something like, "Man, I wish I had my gun to shoot these people," that's not evidence against them, because normal people talk like that. When you see something evil happening, you could say, "Man, I wish I had a gun. I would stop these people." There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't indicate anything other than that Rittenhouse was obviously very upset about what was happening in the United States, all of the property destruction. But there's more to that. There's more to it that I want to say, and it goes beyond Rittenhouse. What is happening to Rittenhouse, all of the propaganda that is being lodged against him, it really is a reflection of the decay of the United States. Because one thing that has been taking place for years now in America is the praise of the criminal and the lowlife, and the hatred towards the righteous. If you look at the cult of George Floyd, if you look at how people have been making it out that people like Jacob Blake were just innocent victims, that they were just victims of the injustice of the system, and how they have done this with numerous people like Jacob Blake, Rashard Brooks, etc., etc. You know the whole lot. And story after story, from George Floyd and to all these other types, to all these other people that the media will try to make martyrs out of, you will see that these people were criminals, and they were just very malicious and insidious people. They were violent, criminal types. And people in the media, left-wing commentators, will say, "Oh, look, victims of injustice, proof that the American justice system is so evil, it's so corrupt. The police force is so evil, it's so corrupt." The American police force is the best police force in the world. Try going to Mexico. Hell, try going to South Africa and dealing with the police forces of these countries. They are horrendously corrupt. And in many cases, they will actually collaborate with the criminals to murder innocent people. This has happened in Mexico with police officers collaborating with narcos. It does happen in South Africa, where people can't even rely on the police in South Africa, to the point that they have to rely on private security. The American police force is the best police force in the world. And when I hear about abuses, I always wonder, how did the person end up getting arrested or beaten up by police officers? What was he doing? Turns out that he was a criminal. Turns out that there was a 911 call on him, like in the case with Jacob Blake, where his baby's mama called 911 because there was a situation where Blake had taken away the kids, or was trying to take away the kids, and she said in the 911 call that she had been sexually assaulted, or she told police that she had been sexually assaulted. Cops tried to arrest Jacob Blake. It's interesting that cops were trying to arrest Jacob Blake in defense of his baby's mama, who was a black woman. Okay, there is absolutely no evidence at all of racism in any of this stuff. Even the whole Breonna Taylor situation. Oh, they tried to make it out that she was this innocent woman just sleeping, and the cops came in and just shot her while she was in bed, and blah, 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 blah. And it turns out that she was basically the freaking treasurer for a local drug dealer. And there was a warrant out for her because she was involved with this drug dealer. She had a sexual relationship with this drug dealer. She was not innocent. But what do all these types of people do? These talkers and these media influencers, what do? They try to make it out that these people are victims and the cops are evil. It's the same thing with the whole Kenosha situation. The rioters are just protesters fighting for justice. My phone keeps ringing. Oh my God, these Indian scammers. Please stop. India is really busy right now. Anyway, the rioters are just innocent liberal protesters, and people like Rittenhouse, they're not there to protect property. They are there as terrorists. Rittenhouse is a terrorist. So it is the uplifting of lowlives and the attack on people who are actually trying to do the right thing. And one thing I have noticed, I have watched many, many videos of police officers arresting people. And one thing that I have always noticed is that people who are obvious scum, obvious scoundrels, when they get arrested, they act like victims. Please, oh, it hurts. I can't breathe. Oh, it hurts. Oh, let me go, please. I saw a video where a guy bit a police officer as he was trying to arrest him. I think he bit his hand or his arm. And then the officer's canine attacks the guy. He then bites the dog's ear. Other officers come and pin this guy down, and then they begin to arrest him. And he's saying, please let me go. Please let me go. Oh, God, help. Help. All of a sudden, he is a victim. It's like, you're a criminal. Cops are looking for you. You bite a police officer, which is a horrendous crime because for all he knows, you could have some sort of horrible disease. Then you bite his dog, and now you're the victim. What's happening is not injustice in the United... Well, there is injustice, but not how people portray it. There is injustice against the righteous. But what's happening in America is not injustice being done by the system. What's happening in America is the emptying out of any sense of accountability to the point where criminals are victims and people who actually try to defend property are evil terrorists. It's really, really sick. What I really worry, though, in regards to this Rittenhouse situation is that the jury is going to be afraid of another riot in Kenosha, and they're going to say that Rittenhouse is guilty. This is my biggest fear. Or they're going to get Rittenhouse on a lower sentence, and he won't spend the rest of his life, but he'll spend a substantial amount of years in prison. And that's one thing that I fear. Because if that happens, because even if Rittenhouse doesn't get life in prison, let's say they do a lower sentencing on him, and or a lighter sentencing on him, and he gets 20 years in prison, or maybe less, that's still pretty scary because any time in prison is pretty scary. And what that is going to do is, for one thing, it's going to make the right-wing side more and more angry, and we definitely don't want that, because when you have the right wing getting angry and the left wing feeling empowered, the only end result of that is a clash between the two sides. And another thing it's going to do, if this does happen, another thing that it would do is it would make people more and more scared to do the right thing. And people are going to be more and more afraid of being thrown in prison for doing something that is actually just, like defending property. So it would discourage righteous people, and it would actually empower criminals, because then criminals would think, well, I can just destroy property, and I'm going to be hailed as a hero. I'm going to be hailed as a modern day Che Guevara. It really is sickening. I actually don't know why this is even a big story. I know why they're pushing it as a big story, because it's highly political, and either verdict, I mean, if the verdict goes one way or the other, regardless, it's going to be used for some sort of political provocation and escalation, because whatever verdict we get, one side is going to be pissed off, regardless. And I really don't know why, though. This is a huge story. Why does it have to be so widely reported? There are many cases in America where people have shot and killed criminals in defense of property. There was one story, I think this happened in Oklahoma or Texas, I don't remember, but there were two guys, I think they were from Venezuela. They were Afro-Latino guys, and they were robbing some guy's house, and the neighbor went out and shot and killed them. And there were protests, but nobody cared because it's a cold-cut case of somebody defending his neighbor's house. I don't see why Rittenhouse is a big story, but all of the billions of dollars worth in property destruction is not a big story. And what that conveys is that you can destroy property and that's okay. You'll be hailed as a hero. But if you defend property, you'll be deemed as a white supremacist terrorist. It really is sickening. But yeah, I don't see why this whole thing is a big story. It should not be a big story. It should be a small story that the media reports on here and there. You can look it up on Google News, and there should be just a trial, a verdict, and that's it. I don't see why this is a big story. I know why they are mass reporting this story to the point where it's an international headline, because either verdict, be it innocent or guilty, is going to accelerate the political polarization in the United States. So, yeah. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.